Well, we're back with another edition of the podcast. McCowan here, Shannon there at the top of your screen, and rarely a day without some kind of news. And unfortunately, the last week or so, it's been mostly bad for baseball. The president of the Toronto Blue Jays, Mark Shapiro, joins us. Well, not what you wanted to hear last night, this morning, but your ball club is on hiatus now for the weekend. Are they still in Washington?
Yes, I mean, that's still dynamic, but we're likely to stay there. But I actually, I think there's been not a lot of positive things for any of us in all walks of life, and certainly baseball. But the last week for me, for 3 to 3.5 hours a night, or at least the first 7-8 innings of every night, has been a lot of good. You know, because I've gotten to watch the game that I love, and I would tell you that anybody that watches closely would have seen a team that is clearly on track to take the next steps, and so many positive things. We've been in every single inning of every single game.
Yeah.
And, overwhelmingly the reasons we lost have not been reasons that are going to be present with the team that we're building for the long haul. But there's so many great things going on. So there have been some really good moments over the last week, Bob, but those have been 3 hours a day. The rest of the day, you're right, has been dominated by a lot of challenging times.
Okay, so Mark, I know Bob's going to ask a ton of questions, so I'm going to get one in quick, and then I'll just going to back.
Come on, I'm going to go to you then,
John. What do you think of the extra inning guy on second base rule now, particularly after last night in the Grand Slam?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm used to it from youth baseball. I've lived it with my son. I've always kind of thought it was a good idea. I guess I would say this. It's something that we need to stay open-minded to. In general, the 15-inning games, the 16-inning games don't benefit anyone. Fans don't stay and watch them. They put clubs at risk of injury. They make players step outside of their game as they try to usually end it with one swing as they get more fatigued. And oftentimes they have a residual impact on team health, pennant races, and I just don't think they accomplish much. So whether or not that is the right rule, I'm not certain. However, I think baseball in general needs to be more open-minded to rule changes, like all the other major sports, like hockey, basketball, and football. And that is one that I think ultimately some mechanism to potentially avoid the 16, 17-inning games would be a good thing. And it has ended games, in the 10th or, for us both times, just not favorable.
Right. We're guys who all grew up with baseball in a traditional sense, and the game ends when the game ends. There's no clock. If it takes 20 innings, it takes 20 innings. Does it smack to you as being too gimmicky, Shapiro?
I am, in so many ways, I love the traditional side of baseball. I'm a traditional uniform guy. I love the Yankees, Red Sox, San Francisco Giants. Like, those are the uniforms I like. I gravitate towards, the tradition of the game. However, as I think about the game moving forward, as I think about continuing to be attractive to a younger fan base, or maybe just a society that didn't grow up like we grew up, with standard definition television without remote controls, and grew up with a shorter attention span, I think that we need to stay open-minded about. That's what I would tell you, that we need to try to cling to the traditions that are most important in baseball, which is the way the game is played, but ultimately try to be more open-minded about some of the rules. And so whether or not I would actually focus on more of the high leverage rules that create more action in the game and kill some of the dead time in the game. That's what I think is most important. This one I don't really view to be that important, but I still think it is symbolic of being open-minded to potentially changing the game for the better over the long haul.
One of the things that we're seeing here, Mark, is this new policy of after a strikeout, not throwing the ball around the infield. And I'm not, that doesn't bother me at all. I'm not sure it saves, a second of time.
It doesn't, yeah.
No, but I mean, it doesn't, I'm not going to bring back wool uniforms. I don't think that's what you're proposing here. But, I mean, some stuff is okay. It's just this 10th inning thing. I don't know. It just feels
Yeah.
It feels COVID to me, like it's something that's only related to that situation.
Well, it got brought up before that, and it was kind of, I think it was unanimously passed, but then it didn't make it through the labor negotiations. So again, I'm not sure. Here's the feedback I would give you. They did it in the minor leagues the last 2 years,
right,
all the way through, unanimously applauded by true baseball guys that worked their whole lives in the game, as a massive improvement to playing games out traditionally. So it was unilaterally, uniformly recommended by the farm directors, by the minor league managers. So what I would say is, reserve judgment, continue to keep an open mind. Let's watch how it plays out. It does add another layer of strategy, which I like, to the game for sure. But and it's succeeded in ending games shorter. There haven't been a lot of long games. So I think it has a potential benefit. I would agree with you, though, Bob. It's not a high leverage one. There are much more better ways to impact the game positively. But again, I think it symbolizes some open-mindedness.
So are you in favor of putting the batter on first base? Like when you start the guy on second base, you got first base open. And I've seen a couple of teams.
From a strategy point
of view, yeah.
I think it's too many variables to go into that. It depends who's hitting, who's on deck. Who you're. Certainly creates a force. I thought it was something to think about. Last night. But the reality, when it's not when it's the top of the inning, because you're going to get to hit again, and every run is important. So hey, if they score one, you got just as good of a percentage chance of scoring one and tying it back up. So I may say if it was if you're looking at the bottom half of the inning and you're the visiting team, maybe, but not last night.
Since we're talking about last night, I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about Pearson's performance, because the first chance we've had to see him against in real action. This guy is such an interesting story. A high prospect, gets hurt, his stock falls. You guys, one of your scouts goes to see him, and he's literally the only scout there at the first one. He's uber impressed, and I can only imagine there's a meeting at some point, and I don't know whether you were involved with it. You probably were. Where you go, boy, this guy is really good. How do we get him late in the first round? Everybody else is going to figure this out. Tell me what you guys and your scouts more specifically saw in this kid that convinced you that the health issues that kind of scared everybody else away were worth the risk.
Yeah, so I think it's funny because I don't know, these stories tend to get a little bit misreported, and I listened to Buck last night and was only partially factually true. The reality is that because he was hurt and because he was a transfer, kind of had a broken history, and had thrown some bullpens where he hit 100, that teams in the modern baseball landscape that use models to make decisions, so they want a wealth of information, they get scared off of a guy who seemingly pops on the scene late and doesn't have a big history, right? So they get like, we're not, he's throwing 100, but the track record's not there. Two things in this case, and I think he would never, ever, ever take credit for it, but, and because it's not the nature of the way he leads, but Ross Atkins took an active role in kind of identifying Pearson and saying, and Ross is a former pitcher and gravitates towards pitching, love the delivery, love the athleticism, has all the markers of an absolute beast, which is, he looks like he has the athleticism, flexibility, repetition of delivery to remain healthy. And that allows you to develop pitches. That layered with the scout, Matt Bischoff. And it wasn't that Matt saw him and evaluated him. It was that Matt knew this kid inside and out, knew his routines. I remember sitting in the draft room and reading, Matt had Nate Pearson's routine in between start, day of start, minute by minute, what he did. He knew the kid inside and out as a person. And ultimately, when you're drafting guys, you're betting on people. You're betting on a person. You're not just betting on the talent, you're betting on a person. So I think Matt's ability to know the person, and, you know, Ross's conviction that he had a lot of the attributes that big league pitchers and starting pitchers have, caused us to take him much higher. If you go back and look at the, you know, the prognosticators, much higher than where people predicted he was taken. People raised their eyebrows when we took him where we took him. He wasn't expected to go that high.
No, I know.
So
boy, I'll tell you what, though, then, Mark, what you're telling me is for a game that has become so numbers oriented, so analytically based, it was an eyeball test again. It's great to hear an eyeball test story.
I think it was a character test and an eyeball test. You know, it was a character test because we knew the person, which in the draft, I think scouts have to be as much operatives, right? Like, you know, like they need to be like military operatives. They need to, you know, if you have information other people don't have, that's a competitive advantage. Everybody has the game information. Everybody has the radar gun. Everybody has the spin rate. Everybody has, you know, all of the different objective and analytics. If a scout does a better job knowing the player, that's a way to beat another team. So I still think you can beat teams knowing the player better, and that gives you greater conviction to push a player up when all the other things line up. So I still believe that the analytics piece for framing a decision, John, is really important, because what used to be wrong with the draft is if the magnets fell off the board, we could never put them back up the same way. You know, bias entered into it, time of day, loudness of the scout, recency bias, contextual. We you know, we could never put it back up the same way. You know, now I think we have a better way of framing those decisions, but we still need to be flexible. We need to be flexible for the nature of old school, and one of the major inputs of the model needs to be old school scouting. You know, the ability for a scout to kind of offer information, whether it be just his opinion on a player's talent, or whether a player's makeup, character, you know, and personality. In this case, that was a separator for us in getting Nate Pearson. And you saw it last night. Like, he clearly was nervous early. He settled. He, for a young pitcher to pitch with only 2 pitches the first time through the rotation and then say, okay, they've seen me now. I'm going to have to bring in my 3rd and my 4th pitch a little bit. And all of a sudden bring in his other pitches, and you could see the hitters' reactions. They were looking for fastball, slider, and nothing else. And all of a sudden he drops in a curveball, and it's like, what was that? You know, and then he throws a changeup, and they're like, where was that? Coming off 98. You know, it was pretty impressive. So, look, pitching is a game of attrition. We've all seen it. Pitchers get hurt. You know, guys pop on the scene. You don't even know where they are 5 years from now. This kid, because of work ethic, intelligence, desire to be great, and that's what you want. You want players who want to be great. Bo Bichette doesn't just want to be good. Bo Bichette wants to be the best player in the game. I'm not saying he can be, but I'm telling you, every day Bo Bichette wakes up, he wakes up with a passion and a fury to be the best player in all of baseball. I mean, a fury. Like, he's driven to do it. So when you sit in our chairs, Ross's chair, my chair, Charlie Montoyo's chair, you know, do you sleep better at night knowing a guy cares that much, wants to be that great? Yes, I can tell you. Because I've looked in eyes of other guys who were really, really, really talented and were just happy to make some good money, but weren't driven to be great. So I think when you start to put those kinds of guys in a room together that, you know, want to be great and want to win, you know, that's when you start doing things that are beyond what you should do, you know, that they exceed expectations.
With Mark Shapiro, the president of the Toronto Blue Jays. Look, we've seen this kid for 5 innings in a real game. I mean, you know, it's really easy to get way too carried away. And even though they were 5 very impressive innings, but we are guys who have grown up with baseball and have been in and around the game really all our lives. And I'm always compelled to look for comparatives when I see a new kid. Do you see any? And I'm going to throw out a couple of names that really are unfair to Pearson, but Nolan Ryan, Roger Clemens, those are as I'm watching this guy the other night, those are the 2 guys that I sort of thought about. They were both extraordinary pitchers. Both threw very hard. Clemens also has an intriguing, I'm interested in your reaction to this, intriguing kind of comparison to Pearson. As you know, the saying with Clemens was, you better get to him in the first inning, because if he gets past the first, you're never going to get to him. And Pearson sort of has that same kind of thing, I think, historically in his career. He gets better the longer he pitches. There's a whole bunch of things in there, Shapiro, but take the ball and run with it a little bit. Do you see any of that?
Verlander does that too. Sure,
yeah, he is.
The same way. I think. I think it's important as a scout to put comparables on guys. As a front office guy, I think it's important not to do it, because you can start to hear. You can go back at the list of GMs who have, kind of stuck a rookie with a label of, oh, this guy's the next Rod Carew, this guy's the next, and all of a sudden, he's not doing anything. So, I can see when you mention that, I can see some parallels to Clemens, but nobody just immediately comes to mind. I mean, I think it's funny that, Ross and I were talking today, man, Pearson was awesome. How about Max Scherzer? You got to be kidding me. Guy's 36 years old. The guy was throwing 95 on his 110th pitch with 4+ pitches. There wouldn't be a team of baseball who had a chance against him last night. I mean, that was ridiculous. Do you realize what that was? The second outing of the year after so the level of stuff and competitiveness, to me, I was watching him in awe. 36 years old, still competing, still throwing 96 late in the game with 4+ pitches, a slider that right-handers didn't have a chance. I mean, didn't even have a chance. And he's the same guy you mentioned, he's not the same kind of pitcher as Nate, but not getting hit. If you don't get to him early, you're done. You're done. You have no shot. You have no shot. You know what that is? That's competitiveness. That's just not stuff. That's not genetics. That's that killer instinct. Those guys get better because they're, they want to win.
Okay.
This is a guy. Sorry, John. I do one more quick one, and then I'll let you have a couple. But so this is a kid who I think has hit 105 on the gun, Pearson, or something very close to that. Now they're starting to talk about, could this kid get to 110? I'm not really interested in that, except from your perspective. Define how big the difference is between 100-mile-an-hour fastball and 105-mile-an-hour fastball, or 110-mile-an-hour fastball. Is it overwhelmingly different, in your opinion?
I mean, here's what I would say. I think if you're a starting pitcher, yes, it is different. It's dramatically different if you're able to locate it and throw it, in a spot.
Granted.
If you're just, throwing it in a general location and you have to compromise delivery, you put yourself at injury risk just to hit velo. I'm not sure that you get a whole lot out of that. I'm getting a call from the commissioner's office. So anyway, I would say that, what's more important with Nate is that he repeat his delivery, that he develop multiple pitches to attack hitters, because you can't win no matter how hard you throw. You can't win going through a lineup multiple times unless you're able to throw multiple pitches and be able to attack hitters. Attacking hitters usually involves some ability to locate. The better stuff you have, the less fine your location has to be. But you certainly need something to throw in a fastball count other than a fastball. That's what I would say. You need it. As you're thinking about a starting pitcher, he has to have something to throw in a fastball count other than a fastball.
Gotcha.
Two quick questions on the Washington series finishes today, but what do you do with your team as it doesn't go to Philadelphia? What happens this weekend for the club?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to continue to practice and train and probably do simulated games, much like we did in summer training, to keep our pitchers stretched out in shape. We will use the time to try to get Critch healthy, and Bo's going to play today, but get Bo back full, and certainly our bullpen, although it's back pretty much today, could use a little bit of a blow, but it's not ideal to have 3 days off. That's not good. But this has been a less than ideal year, from not knowing where we're going to play to having that change 3 times in 5 days. And I think ultimately it's up to, and it's a tribute to our players that you have not heard a lot of excuses coming out of their mouths. It's been, okay, 16 days on the road. All right, 16 days on the road. And by the way, no one's written this, but the road is a lot different than the road used to be. The protocol these guys go through, it's rigorous and it is not relaxing. And they are enduring a very tough, they may be staying in a nice hotel, but there's not much, cushy about what they're experiencing on the road, and they have to go through every day.
Actually, to that point, you don't hear very much because the team's so darn competitive. I mean, the guys, that's got to be something that they know they can win every game. They haven't, but they've been in every game, as you talked about earlier. So that's got to help.
I think so. I think that's a little bit like they said early on, we're not going to make excuses. I kind of related to them one of my personal experiences. I try to stay away from talking about Cleveland because of the way when I came here, obviously people didn't want to hear that. But in 2007, we got the first 3 games of our season snowed out, and the first 7 games snowed out of Cleveland. We had to play the next 4 in Milwaukee as in a neutral site with no one in the fans as the home team. And we had to make up those 3 games, throughout the season. And I remember the analytics guys, we get back to the analytics, the guys next to me, Chris Antonetti, who's now a top executive in MLB, saying, well, our chances just went down like 15% because we had to make up those 3 games. Literally, like we had to play one of those games in Seattle, so we lost home field. And we had to make up the others on off days, and our chances. So what happened? We ended up winning 96 games, tied for the most in the major leagues that year. And the character of that team of CeCe Sabathia, Grady Sizemore, Victor Martinez, Casey Blake, Travis Hafner, they weren't going to make excuses. Like, so okay, we got 7 games snowed out. Let's go. We're good. And so I see the same thing with this group, and they have 10 times the challenges of not having a home field. Not being able to play in their home stadium, not being able to play, and starting with 16 straight days on the road, and I just don't see them taking the easy out, taking the excuse.
What's the latest in Buffalo?
The latest is it's undergoing a massive transformation, from lighting to a new field to new clubhouses being built, new batting cages, new weight room, new training room. Marnie Starkman's leading that effort for us, and I think that the players are going to be amazed and blown away and probably shocked, the ones that have been there already. It's a massive challenge because it's not a reflection on Buffalo, but you're taking a truly minor league facility and really one that was built in the 90s or 80s and trying to make that major league quality one. And then on top of that, you're trying to layer on virus protocol, which requires extra space and a lot of extra space for social distancing and testing and all the other things that we need to do in today's world. So it's a huge effort. The fact that it will get done in 2 weeks is pretty remarkable. But I think we're excited that in the world we live in, we're going to have to show you a video of it. We're excited to show it on video to everybody.
You mentioned earlier that just a few minutes ago that the commissioner's office was calling you, and I can only imagine what that was about. But you're going to lose this weekend series. Miami is going to lose who knows how many games here. I have to believe that there is some contingency plan, but I'm not sure anybody understands what it will be. Do you?
Only that, the reality is that things changed after we decided to move forward and play. That I don't think it's been that well communicated, but a bubble wasn't really possible, for baseball, for the nature of the fact that we hadn't started our season yet. The other sports were just already into their postseasons. And the only places to do the bubble were the highest risk locations, Florida, Arizona, and Texas. And so that we, once we decided to move forward and then everything changed in the U.S. and cases spiked everywhere, this risk was a reality of a possibility. The protocol has worked on 29 teams. It hasn't worked on one team. That one team now is creating a lot of turbulence and jeopardy for all of us. But I would say, Bob, if this happens with multiple teams, we're probably having a different story. But as of right now, it's only happened with one team and another team through contact and, is being impacted by it. So we've got to continue to play it out and see what happens. we've undertaken the season. Yes, it will create more inequities, but the season's already an anomaly. It's not a normal season. We're not, we're certainly not looking at normal. We're just trying to get the game back for the people who love it, for the people who play it, and not go an entire year without playing baseball. And if we can't finish it, I think it's a reality that all of us knew when we started, but I still hope that we can.
Is it realistic to think it can continue without Miami? If Miami opts out, that the world can continue?
I haven't really thought that much about that. I think that we would continue with Miami, but it could be in Miami that's half their taxi squad. The commissioner's probably spending a lot more time on that than me. I'm thinking about the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, the dilemma that I see is, whether that happens or not with Miami, and we got our fingers crossed that this kind of an outbreak doesn't happen with another team or more than one more team. That might be manageable. I'm just even wondering here, are you going to get 60 in, or is it even possible for you to make up these dates that you have lost?
No, I don't think
there is.
I think it's possible that this will be a year where, winning percentage probably ends up being a bigger part of it. Some teams play 56, some teams play 57, some teams play 858. But I'm not sure with the nature of the way things have gone this past week to expect every team to play 60. That may still be a goal. It may still be something that we try to do, but I think we've all kind of said internally that may not be the most important thing this year. The most important thing this year is just we're playing baseball. You got to see Nate Pearson. You've seen, Thomas Hatch. You've seen Anthony Kay pitch really well. Barucki come back in the bullpen and look really good in the bullpen. And, Teoscar Hernandez showed that the strides he made second half of last year have a chance to stick around. And, Krichik showed that the spring he had, where he made some adjustments to his approach at the plate certainly looked like they could stick. And Bo Bichette, come out with the determination to be, the best player on this team and show he's the best. Danny Jansen showed that all the work he did in the offseason, warrants, him being one of the best young catchers in the American League, and so on and so on. It's not the Rowdy Tellez, and you can keep going. Pretty encouraging. So I think that's what I'm focusing on.
Speaking of Bo, did you ever get an explanation about why Dante got thrown out last night?
I did, but I'm not gonna get into that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the optimism is apparent, and it's warranted. I'm just wondering whether, this being the kind of year that it is, do you have concepts in your head? Would getting to the postseason, winning a round, winning 2 rounds, winning a World Series, is that still the ultimate objective even in this, or are you still in the process of building this thing?
I can regress out this year, Bob, and just say, listen, like, to go from the amount of games we won last year to say your goal is to win the World Series the next year, that would be, has it been done? Yeah, it's been done. It's been done recently. But, you've got to, the history of the game shows you there are steps and strides to make. And this year it was, we needed to get to that team that took the next step, which means be closer to a 500 team or just over a 500 team. The players weren't satisfied with that. They didn't put any limits on it, and they wanted to win a World Series this year. And they're determined to show all of us that. But we're taking steps and strides. We supplemented our core of players. We're still finding out kind of who is the core and who's not the core, where the weaknesses are, where we have to supplement. A longer season gives you the ability to make more adjustments. This season, you kind of build a roster, and you're stuck with the roster you've got, by and large, not completely. Yep. So the goal, yes, is still to win a World Series, but the goal absolutely is to continue to progress. And I think that, you can call it optimism. I think optimism is when I'm speaking and no one quite gets why I'm being so positive. I call that the blank stare phase. I've been through that a few times, where you kind of talk about a plan and people look at you with blank stares. Now I think it's objective. Like, you can see it out there. If you're watching our games, not just looking at the box score, but you're watching our games, I guarantee you, if you talk to Kevin Cash, of the Tampa Bay Rays, I guarantee you, if you talk to Dave Martinez of the Washington Nationals, those are the managers of those two teams, You pull those guys aside and ask them how it feels playing us right now. And that is when the other club starts to feel you, starts to know, damn, those guys are not just going to be good. They're good now. I don't want to play them. That's kind of where we are. So we still are an imperfect team. We still have areas to address. We still are going to go with some volatility because young players are volatile. But man, we're closer. That's all I can tell you. We are closer.
How do you manage the future without A, AA, and AAA baseball though?
We can't do that. We can't do that indefinitely.
But they're in more jeopardy than your league is, though, right?
Yeah, no. We will have minor league baseball next year. It may not look exactly the same, but we will have minor league baseball next year. And I think we'll have something, John, this fall. I just don't know what yet.
Could you see, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but could you see some kind of an amalgamation of the different levels of minor league baseball?
Only for the fall. I think that's kind of what the fact that we have Austin Martin, Jordan Groshans, Alec Manoah mixed in with some veteran guys and a taxi squad over in Rochester right now. We're trying to, take this opportunity because it's the only opportunity we have to get some of our better prospects out playing, even in an environment where the rest of the guys there are kind of preparing to be backup players to our major league team. So that's what's going on in Rochester right now.
Well, it's been, we've said it several times. You've been in every baseball game you played so far this year. You got as many wins as you got losses. It has not been disappointing. All the games have been on the road. Some may even say that when you get to Buffalo, it's almost going to be like being on the road. But whatever the case may be, it's a good start, and you're to be congratulated. And I think a lot of Blue Jay fans are anxious to see how this plays out over the next 50-odd games. Congrats on so far, and thanks a lot for taking time for us. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you guys. I always love talking baseball and love talking to you too. It was good.
Mark, we got to get a cutout in Buffalo with Bob. We got to get one of those cutouts behind home plate for Bob at the stadium. We got to do that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm gonna spend my next hour working on that, John.
No, you're not.
Well, do that before you phone.
A rug.
Do that before you phone the commissioner back.
I'm gonna call. I'm gonna return that call back first.
Thank you, Mark. That's Mark Shapiro, the president of the Toronto Blue Jays. We'll catch you next time on the podcast. Bye-bye.